Hi everyone, welcome to week 8 and also welcome to my presentation on analyzing and interpreting data. So I'm just going to walk you through some of the stuff that I did and I collected. So I'm going to show you, this was a math test that my students actually just took today, so it was perfect timing. I'm just going to quick walk you through this test here. So the first 5 problems of the test required students to use any strategy that we learned about in addition. So using a number line, counting on, drawing a picture, using your fingers to answer the first 5 questions. These are all addition. The second page here is the same thing. Number 6 through 10, but this is with subtraction problems. So again, they could use any strategy that they wanted, counting back, the number line, drawing a picture, and crossing off. And then finally, for numbers 11, 12, and 13, these were all word problems that in which the students had to add. And then 14, 15, and 16 were also word problems in which the students needed to subtract. So this was the test that I just gave today, and I scored it. I want to show you on the side here, this is all of my students who took the assessment from numbers 1 through 28. So I always number my students from day 1, your student 1 in the class, all the way up to, I actually have 29 students, but one of my students is supplemental learning support who did not take this test. So I have the student numbers on the side, and then I have the questions all the way up at the top here, questions 1 through 16. So I do want to note that questions 1 through 10 were only worth 1 point, and then questions 11 through 16 were worth 2 points. So when you look at the average of the questions that the students answered correctly, a lot of them fell in the 70% range, so average, and I only had 2 scores here that were below 70%. One for addition and one for subtraction. Now, when I tried to do this, I listened to the video that Dr. Drayon provided. When I tried to do this, because these are worth more than 1 point, it was a little tricky. It kind of got messed up. But I looked a little further into the data because they were over 100%. So as you can see here, just going down through the column, a lot of students got this first question right, lots of 2s. Again, lots of 2s, some 1s. The problems didn't necessarily get harder. I'm just not sure what exactly the issues were. Then when we bounce over here into subtraction, especially this last problem, you can see that there were a variety, some zeros. Students didn't get any of the questions correct, any of the placement of the numbers correct. That's kind of alarming, and for this student here especially who didn't get any of these questions going across, so that's a little disturbing. So then after I looked at all of the student scores, I just made them out of 22. So this student got a 15 out of 2, that's a 68%, 8 out of 22, 36%. So you can see all the way down here. I'm going to jump over to this side. So this is my class average, 73%. Obviously the max was 100%, so I had a few students who received 100%. The average was 73, so not terrible. The minimum was 36. That's a little alarming, considering we spent about 4 to 5 weeks talking about addition and subtraction 0 through 20. Then after watching that video again, I decided to take my addition and subtraction scores to see what the average was for that. So it's kind of cool, actually. A lot of my students did really well on addition. I have some 20% here. I mean, you know what? It is what it is. I do have a 0%. That's kind of alarming. I'm going to actually scroll over to that student just to see who it is. Yeah, so that's a student who has actually been struggling all school year. So definitely is alarming that still at this point in the school year that she's not understanding how to add. It may be because recently we did the addition part and we did the subtraction part, and she may still be overcompensating for addition, considering she got an 80% on subtraction. So I believe if I would go back and look at her test, she probably added instead of subtracted on this portion. I'm actually pleasantly surprised to see how many 100% actually scores above 70 that I have for subtraction. Typically, this is a really hard skill, but I think the fact that I let students use manipulatives and whatever strategy that they wanted in order to take this test, that really helped them. So again, I decided to look at the data here divided out in of individual like percentages, 90s all the way down to 30s. So this kind of makes me feel a little happy just because I had 10 students who were actually, well, I mean, might as well count the 70s. So I had 17 students who scored above a 70%. So I feel like that's pretty great considering I had 28 students that took the test. So that means there's more students who are passing the test and understanding the material than who are not passing. I also want to show you this breakdown here. So this bar graph really just helped me visualize to see exactly the breakdown of my tests again. So I have most students falling above this average range. This 60%, we can work with that. You know, we still have the rest of the school year in order to get kind of things shifted around. So we'll see how that can work. So I'm going to jump over to my Word document. So what does the data say about student learning? So I just said here that I believe that my students performed average on the test. There were very many high scores. I'm pleasantly surprised with the data. The average was pretty good considering it was a 73%. I wish it could have been a little bit better, but you know, take that into consideration and just move forward next time when taking this test. What does it say about my teaching? So I think that most students are ready to move on to the next unit of math, which is actually regrouping with addition. Give me strength because this will definitely be a true testament to my teaching. It is definitely a struggle. This is the first time students in first grade are introduced to regrouping. We use a place value mat and lots of manipulative practice here. So I'm anxious to move on to that next. I definitely think that those students who are ready to move on, like the students who scored above this 70% here, I think they'll do just fine. I am a little concerned about these friends down here in the 30s. One thing I do want to say, not to like, I don't know, my one student who scored very low today was having some major behavior problems, so that does impact how he took the test today. And I just have here that some students need to work on addition and subtraction within 0 to 20, and questions 3 and 9 had an average score in their 60s when you look at the breakdown of the percentages over here. So I'm going to go back and definitely look into that just to see what was up with those two questions and why students, I don't know, for some reason scored a little bit lower than the rest of the addition and subtraction questions. What to do differently to improve student performance? To be honest, I really don't know because I pooled a small group of students when we were taking this test. I had 5 students in front of me who are my ELD students or my itinerant learning support students. So they were with me when I was taking the test. I was working one-on-one with them. I let students choose what strategy they wanted to use, whether it was using their fingers, using manipulatives, because I did give them linking cubes to use. I gave them a number line, so I really don't know. Other than just reviewing subtraction, I really didn't want to make it too obvious. Like on this test here, I read the directions and I read the word problems for the students. I don't know how to make it more explicit than that because I told them, you know, on the first page here, numbers 1 through 5, you are doing addition. And everybody solved the addition problems. Then when everybody was finished with the addition, we went to the subtraction. And I said, okay, now we're moving on to the subtraction. So to be honest, I'm not really sure, other than maybe putting some visuals on here, like pictures to help them out. But again, they had the opportunity to draw and cross off their drawings if that's the strategy that they chose to use. So maybe next time just putting some pictures on here to make it more visual for students who really didn't know what strategy they wanted to use. I could probably do that. But like I said, I already did my adaptations for the students who needed them, so Can't really do much more there. And plus, I do read all the word problems for them. I just thought maybe giving them also a highlighter to highlight the numbers on the word problems, since some of these subtraction word problems were a little more difficult than others. Like I did put the visual up here, but hey, maybe I need to do that down here and make it a little more explicit. But I was kind of, very hands-off on this assessment because I wanted to see what they could do, what strategies they would use, and especially on those word problems, I wanted to see if they could pick up the vocabulary of how many more or in all or how many fewer, those types of that terminology that the students need to know in order to know what type of operation to use. So this was my interpretation of my data. I really actually enjoyed doing this. I actually really like listening to the video because this really helped me see how my students performed on this assessment. So I'm anxious to use something similar to this for my research plan. For the life of me, I tried to figure out how to do standard deviation, like a bell curve graph, and I could not. So if anybody has any good videos for me to watch, I would really appreciate it because I could definitely see myself using something like that for my action plan. So thank you for listening to my presentation, and if you have any suggestions, please let me know. Thanks.